Hey, yo, it's me, Pops Fan Marmalade, and you're watching the Comics-Related Madness Network. Uh-huh. So come get some. CromCon.
Hey, we want to shout out to our sponsors, Daytona Beach Comic Con. If you are a fan of comic books, if you're a fan of comic book conventions, and if you like meeting comic book creators and getting comics and comic-related stuff, then you need to make your plans to attend Daytona Beach Comic Con. This year's show is September 9th and 10th. Silverline will be there, so you should make your plans to be there too. We'll see you there. If you like comics and find yourself in the Orlando, Florida area, doesn't everyone come to Orlando at some point in time to see the House of Mouse? But when you're here, you need to make it a point to visit Coliseum of Comics, especially the one on East Colonial Drive. They carry Silverline comics, even a limited edition Coliseum of Comics version of our comics. So, when you go, be sure to ask for Silverline Comics and tell them we sent you. OCD stands for Orlando Collector Deviants. OCD, Steve and Trish, they're a family of geeks who promote geek things, particularly those around the Orlando, Florida area. They're big supporters of Silverline, and we think you should be supporters of theirs too. Go give them some love. If you are an independent comic book maker and you need to get your independent comics made, you need to look no further than Kablam Digital Printing. They print our books, and they do a bang-up job. They're not only trusted by Silverline, but many, many independent comic book makers. Head on over to kablam.com and see for yourself just how easy it is to have your comic printed by them. And tell them Silverline sent you.
Hi, this is Tim TK, host of That Silverline Show on Tuesday. Join us at 11 p.m. Eastern, 8 p.m. Pacific every Tuesday night as we discuss pop culture and the joys of making comics.
Hi, I'm Barb Kilber, co-host of Silverline's Wednesday Wham. Join us each Wednesday night as we discuss comics, literature, movies, and anything else that may catch our attention.
I'm Roland Mann, and I host Silverline's Silver Sunday. Join me every Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern as we make mine Silverline.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to That Silverline Show on Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim TK, and joined, as always, by Ron Fortier.
Howdy, everybody.
David Rios.
Hello.
And Jose Fuentes.
Good evening, morning, evening. One of the two.
Good morning to our viewers in international territories. Yes, we are back this week, and we'll have another show next week, and then we have 2 holidays back-to-back, so we'll be off the air again. And be right back with you at the start of the new year to get a kickoff to all things comic books in 2025. However, until that time, we do have some housekeeping to get to. Firstly, we are currently running our pre-order phase for Beyond the Stars, Volume 4. I guess Issue 4. Depending on how many volumes. When we get to Volume 4, it depends on how much writing we're on this to do. But
we have 2 left after this. We're way past the halfway mark. This is a 6-issue miniseries, and with 4 wrapped up, we've got 5 and 6, and hopefully we'll see those at the start of 2025.
Absolutely. And we're very excited. We're currently 7 days left to go and sitting at 77% funded. So if you want to go ahead and get yourself a pre-order, now is the time to do so as we enter in the last week. We have a lot of alternate covers and foils and exclusives still available. Some of the interior art and original covers have already been taken, so if you wanted those, you have waited too long. However, lots of goodies still available, and who knows, there is sometimes we sneak 1 or 2 in at the end of a campaign. And like we always say, you're not crowdfunding a pipe dream of a comic. We're not going to take the money and run. This is a comic that's already completed. It's good to go. It's ready to go to the printers. We're just doing pre-orders in a way that make it easier on the accounting and make it easier for the pre-order issues. So I could give you summary of the story, but we have the man who wrote it himself. So Ron, if you want to give the people listening a brief summary of Beyond the Stars and why they should buy it.
Yeah, well, I mean, basically, it's the saga of the far future and mankind having, settled the stars and galaxies far beyond anything we can imagine. And as the series opens up, a threat from the void of space suddenly materializes and threatens the empire of mankind. This all-consuming black cloud. Well, as it turns out, apparently, an older race that since vanished from the universe had dealt with the same dilemma, catastrophe, or whatever. And within its ruins, there exist the possible answers to how to end this threat. And so the Empire of Man, the Haven Empire, the All-Mother, the Queen, has her chief scientists assemble a team of science warriors to find this lost ancient alien ship, which holds the secret and perhaps a secret weapon that will help them destroy this black cloud of death and doom. Where we're at now with issue number 4 is the team has been successful in locating the lost mother ship and is just now beginning to realize what the concept of that weapon is, just how powerful it is, and how exactly they're to use it. And they don't have all that much time left because the cloud is now reaching inhabited planets and devouring them like crazy, creating a wave of billions of refugees, colonists, and whatever. And so hopefully as the pacing continues, we're heightening the drama going into those last 2 chapters. That's Beyond the Stars.
Very cool. So yeah, like we said, we have 7 days left to go. So if you want to go ahead and get yourself a pre-order, head on over to fundmycomic.com. We're usually on the front page. If we're not there, you can just search Beyond the Stars and we'll show up. Yeah, so go to fundmycomic.com/BTS1-4.
We are on the front page.
Perfect.
I've been there a couple of times today. See how we were doing and all that. So we're definitely on the front page.
And I like the fact, I think we repeated it before, but we should, as always, as in most Silverline series, those of you who are perhaps listening, to this, spiel about Beyond the Stars and saying to yourselves, well, this is the first time I'm aware of this series, and is there any chance I can get the first 3 issues? The answer is yes, you can.
Yes,
all right, you can get issues 1, 2, and 3 while, supporting issue number 4 and get caught up just like that.
Yes. And it's at a very reasonable price, too. I believe that tier is $20, gets you all 4.
Yep.
Yeah. So if you are just now getting into it and have just heard about us either through the show, through other podcasts, anything like that, it's not too late to get in.
I want to give out a shout out to the creative team as well while we're here. And the artist on the series is an Italian artist named Andrea Bormida, 35 years, comic professional, lives in Italy, has pretty much worked for most of the major European comic companies. And this is his first ever American series. So obviously he's got some vested interest in it. He's very excited about it being here and expanding his own fan base. The covers for issue number 4 include Andrea's original. We've got alternates from Rob Davis, and Jose has done one himself. Yes. So there's some really beautiful artwork to have here.
It's really good. I think Jose's is my favorite.
I'm going to say I'm biased, and I said the same thing.
Yeah.
Well, I was taken with your choice, your subject matter, all right? And when people see it, and especially those people familiar with the series, are really going to get a kick out of who is on Jose's cover, all right? And not to spoil, the story completely, but that particular alien creature, all right, has a key scene towards the climax of issue number 6, which I hope readers are really going to appreciate. And so it was fitting, for you to pick that, topic for your cover.
That's awesome, and I can't wait.
Jose knows how to pick them, right?
Yeah.
There you go. Just intuitive, all right? Get to the heart of the drama.
I've inked in a cover of Rob Davis, I think for issue 3, I think it was, or 2. It might have been 2. I inked in a cover that he did for that, and of course I love Rob Davis's work, like just hands down, right? And I knew he was going to do something real cool. I was like, I got to do something that like kind of caters to my sense of humor, I think, or my sense of style. So that's what I did, and then I even got feedback from it from Andrea and from you. So I'm pretty happy with it.
It works. It totally works. So yeah, well done.
Really great. And also, it's just in time where if you have family members or loved ones who are into comics and you want to get them something for Christmas, so you're going to give them that burger receipt.
Or even if they aren't.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get them hooked on comics. Hey, look, I mean, you're talking to a guy who brought up not only his children on comics, but my grandchildren on comics. All right, so I mean, it's never too soon to get the little ones reading.
I just saw something on TikTok earlier today where there's 2 English teachers on a show talking about how their students who read comics performed better than the students who didn't, because the students who grew up reading comics were able to do a higher level of literary analysis because they were able to pick on that up at an earlier age.
Yep, totally. Reading comprehension, you get the skills. And I love the whole idea of comics. We all love comics. The thing is, it's almost like a little magic trick, all right? Because basically they're learning to read, but they're fascinated by the graphics, by the pictures, by the panels, right? All this that keys their imagination. And lo and behold, I mean, after doing this for a year, a couple years, they get to school, and their reading comprehension is leagues ahead of their peers who aren't readers, who haven't had that opportunity to pick up a comic book and explore all those wonders and magic worlds that are inherent in most comics.
Yeah, that's very great. We do have a little more housekeeping as well. Not as much to show for this one, but we have confirmed that Wolf Hunter number 2 will launch in January of next year. So again, what this means is you need to go ahead and order your copies of Beyond the Stars now, so then your next paycheck hits before you need to order a copy of Wolf Hunter.
Totally. There you go.
Spoken by the writer of Wolf Hunter.
Yes.
What's that about, Tim?
It's a World War II spy novel. It's Planes, Trains, and Automobiles meets Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Yeah.
I love your description of it.
Yeah, based on a true story that is kind of was a blender of errors and the real history of what happened. And my thought was, what if we injected some spy espionage into this and actually gave a reason for why these things all happen to go wrong at the same time?
Very cool.
Yeah. Prototype for the British had developed to be taken to America for mass production. It goes missing on a train ride. And at the end of that train ride, before it goes on the dock, that same port gets hit by a bombing raid. In real life, this is all just random circumstance that all happened at the same time. There was no explanation for it. However, we created our own secret history where we involve some German spies in the English government, since we know that historically there is actually about 8 of them that went undetected. So Wolf Hunter is the exploration of what if one of those spies that went undetected was actually active at this time.
Wow.
Okay.
Uh,
So that,
Intrigue.
yeah. So that is our housekeeping for today. Unless we have any other news, we can get into our icebreaker.
We still have, I think, Saturday this week or up through next week. The diamond orders are still able to be placed. So there is still a little more time for people if they're interested in getting the Twilight Grim #3 that's being sold through Diamond. If they want to pick it up through their comic, their local comic shop and all that, they can go through and go through, order that and request that ahead of time. It's about 2-month lead time. I think 2 should be coming out shortly, but 3 is being solicited right now, and another book done by Mr. Rob Davis.
Yeah.
And written by R.A. Jones.
Yes.
It's classic vampires. You'll dig this. This is really good stuff.
So, and with that, I think we're done with our housekeeping, at least for now.
Yeah. It's a busy week. Yeah, we'll get into our icebreaker before we get into tonight's subject. Tonight's subject is going to be all about families, talking about how you can write them into the comics, how to give them unique visual profiles while also selling that they're related, and how to use families as a way to create conflict or add tension or explore themes. Because we're getting into the holidays, we're going to spend a lot of time with our families, whether we like it or not. And it's also a good time to do some family-related storytelling. Before we get into that, though, we do have to talk about what our input has been, what media we've been taking in, because everything is pastiche. In order to be, who was it? Mark Twain that said the diet of a good writer is to read every day. So taking in media, whether that be visual, written, or otherwise, helps your brain and helps also put together the jelly that you end up vomiting out as words later on. So, Ron, over these past couple of weeks, what have you been reading, watching, taking in?
Oh, wow. Maybe apropos, I just finished reading an historical biography, a thing called The Greatest Night by Thomas Asbridge. And it's quite literally the story of a gentleman named William Marshall, a British knight, right, who lived, born in 1114 or something, I believe, and lived for 72 years, and was one of these guys who fate destined to become a power behind the royal families of England, starting with King Henry II, going to his son, Henry the Young, who died, again, no pun, at a young age himself, was supposed to take over his father's place. Then the mantle went to, Richard the Lionhearted. Mm-hmm. Lionheart passes away, his brother John takes over, and then ultimately John's own son at the age of 8 years old, Henry III. Living through all this is this warrior knight, all right, and this is the age of the Middle Age. The class structure had developed these elite warriors, who were knights, the age of chivalry, if you will. And William Marshall, who was the son of a lesser baron or earl, finds himself getting involved with this royal family and becoming a power behind the throne, one of the political people behind it. But what's fascinating is as you read his biography and you see the drama and the politics of gaining power, all right, is that there's this dark father and son antagonism, all right, that you hold the throne, you hold power, but then your own heir, all right, who's supposedly somebody you can trust, who should be loyal to you, and all those things, all right, qualities that we all, strive for, also ends up appearing like a threat. All right, somebody who could take over your power, who could wrest it from you if they so desired and whatever. And so those kind of machinations actually occur throughout William Marshall's life, and how he survives, the being in and out of favor in the courts, and the battles between the British, the French in Normandy. This is also the time when the Holy Roman Empire was trying to wrestle Jerusalem back from the Muslims. It's a turbulent time in world history, and that one man from his birth, I think he lived to the age of 72. He was even involved with the creation of the Magna Carta and that whole shift of where power would be going. But again, reading it, I was more taken with I'm trying to remember what the family name was, the Abigenet Empire, which were all these kings, and how they dealt with family issues. And I'm sure if you have even a peripheral knowledge of European history, the elite all married with other royal families, whether it was in Germany or Italy or Spain or whatever. And it was this royal class that just wanted complete, rule over the world. You didn't have a middle class. You basically had royalty, or you had the serfs and the peasants. And that's the family dynamics that I saw. And when writing, not a whole lot really changes. I think if you talk to psychologists or whatever, all right, there's always that little bit of animosity between generations, between, here, we're in charge, somebody else is going to take over. How does that play out in the drama? How does that play out in the story? And how do you use it to your benefit?
Speaking of using family to develop tension.
Oh,
yeah. I mean, that was, I had a conversation earlier. Someone else said that I think it happened over Thanksgiving. We're talking about the Habsburg of Spain and just the insane levels of inbreeding that happened in nobility in Europe. All right, cool. That's, I mean, I love anytime we can get into history like that. That sounds like something I would enjoy quite a bit, so I might have to add that to my list.
I just watched. I after I finished it yesterday, I penned the review for it on my. I have actually two pulp sites. One's called Pulp Fiction Reviews, and the other one, obviously, when I'm digging into history, it's called Pulp Fact Reviews online. And so that's where that popped up. But again, family dynamics to me have always been a great dramatic element to use in storytelling because it's so obvious. It's right there. I mean, from the time I'm a kid growing up and watching television, I can remember watching Bonanza as a kid, and I mean, there's there's Papa Cartwright and his four sons. I mean, it's just like 4 or 3. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's Adam, Horace, and Little Joe. It was 3.
Okay, yeah.
Well, it was three sons, all from different mothers, by the way. All right, but again,
I did not know that.
what's that? Was it? Yeah, I mean, to me, it was like watching that and thinking to myself, man, it's pretty cool. I mean, you have these brothers all working together, for a common goal, but all different personalities, and obviously, it was a great concept for the show writers because I mean, you could basically write any kind of story. Their personalities were so divergent, and I mean, I carried that to the point where by the time I'm 13 years old and Marvel comes along, we get the Fantastic Four. And I always thought immediately one of the coolest things about the Fantastic Four and Stan Lee was giving us Sue and Johnny Storm, a brother and sister team popping up in a, in a series of superheroes. Okay. So aside from the typical superhero action that I was used to seeing as a kid and reading in comics every week, now we're dealing with a family dynamic kind of thing, right? To the point where, and I think it was brilliant of Lee not to shy away from that, to use it to the max that within a few years of that book debuting and being out there, then you had that great, fantastic issue where Sue and Reed eventually get married, And so, again, underplaying the family thing and bringing that into the dynamics of his storytelling.
I mean, he also, Stanley was great for a lot in general because he said that when he created Spider-Man, when he thought of the idea of like, okay, there's this person who swings, he does web stuff, he's a spider, but that's not a hero. What's the real life issue? Because he wanted to write about like a person with real life issues, and he took that into Fantastic Four, into the X-Men, just kind of finding ways and a lot of that comes down to family dynamics because your families are the people you interact with the most in your life. So if you're having real life issues, they're probably involved in some way.
Well, and then, that's what we do. I mean, we're creators. We filter our life experiences in the stories we tell, and so, I mean, you're talking Peter Parker. I mean, the tragedy in that opening, origin. I mean, he doesn't have parents. He's brought up by his aunt and uncle and loses his Uncle Ben in the first ever story right out the gate, whereby Aunt May becomes a really strong anchor to him in his life as he's going through high school and the angst of being that nerdy kid in school and then dealing with these superpowers. And Aunt May literally becomes a really solid anchor to his character. And, when the rest of the world's going nuts and crazy, that's his safe harbor in the world.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Okay. Jose, this week, what have you been taking in media-wise? Reading, watching, playing?
I just watched the first 2 episodes of Skeleton Crew, Star Wars Skeleton Crew.
Oh, yeah.
That was it. And that plays, like, the beginning plays into, like, some family stuff, too. But music-wise, for my family right now, it's mostly Christmas music.
Okay.
Now that Thanksgiving is over, all the Christmas music comes out. Mariah Carey has been thawed.
That's fair. I so far have not lost Whamageddon yet, but we're only 10 days in. We'll see if we can make it the rest of the month without hearing Wham.
Yeah, I haven't heard it yet either. I'll be honest with you, but I play a lot of like stuff off my like Spotify and stuff like that, so I can pick and choose what songs I want. It's kind of cheating, but
yeah.
But my wife and I, we like the classics, some Nat King Christmas stuff. You know what I mean? And some, Dean Martin and whatnot. Just the classics.
Okay, that's fair. Yeah. We've been doing the August Burn Red heavy metal Christmas album. That's been what we've been putting on the house and have been doing stuff. And I guess also for those of you who are listening and are not familiar with Whamageddon, so we can get more people into the game and maybe make it a check-in moment for the show next year. Right. The game of Whamageddon is you must go the entire month of December without hearing Wham's Last Christmas. This includes in the mall or places where you'd be subjected to it involuntarily. Once you hear it, you've lost the game. And that is when you enter into PvP mode and try to sabotage your friends by making them listen to Wham's Last Christmas.
That's just evil.
It is.
That's the point, right?
Yeah. And so that you win by making it through the month of December without listening to Last Christmas by Wham. So that is the game of Whamageddon. If you're listening at home, let us know how you're doing. We'll check in throughout the month.
Right. So far, I have been Wham free.
Yep, me too.
See what happens.
Okay. And David, what have you been up to media-wise? Reading, watching, playing?
Let's see. No playing. Watching, just as regular, whatever while I'm eating is about the only time the TV's on. Still, as I mentioned last time we were on, been watching the Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
So definitely, like I said, I had never watched it at the time, so it's actually a first for me. I've seen all the other stuff. Yeah.
Okay.
But there's a lot of really cool stuff that I'm picking up. You know, I see a lot of the actors at the time. You know, just seeing them do the parts, and you're like, oh, okay. Things like, you know, the mom was Terry Garr.
Yeah.
You know, really didn't think about that. Dr. Channing was Barbara Gordon, you know, and all this stuff. So you get a lot of that, but then things that kind of I'm not sure if I mentioned it last time, but you know, looking at like I didn't realize that Darwin Cook was so heavily involved in that show.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he did like the opening, I think the title design, some of the opening sequence stuff, storyboards, things like that. So very, very cool.
Cool.
But
Yeah.
because I love his New Frontier stuff, so definitely. But also, that's it for that. Reading wise, very little the Krakoa stuff, but I've been kind of cycling through some of the Marvel stuff. Like Tim had mentioned that he is playing around with subscription on that.
Yeah.
Marvel Universe stuff. So I've been kind of forcing myself to see if I can keep up as much as possible with work and everything with the new releases that they release every week. It's about 3 issues back. And some of the stuff I love, some of the stuff I really don't like.
That's fair. Yeah.
Some is weird. But yeah, just kind of picking that up. I did pick up, and I have it here in my box on my to read stuff, the Silverline Christmas special that was released. I think it was a week ago or 2 weeks ago. I haven't been into pick up books, but I just got that one. I didn't see your name on the cover, Tim, so I don't know if you're in the first part of that or the second part of that.
It might be the second part.
Wolf Hunter, but
Yeah.
either way, looking forward to reading that because I did miss out on the other one. So, but that's it. That's what's been going on. Yeah.
That was I love that Wolf Hunter Christmas special was also an interesting one because that was also another me taking a weird coincidence that happened in the war just because the random things happen to align in the universe and adding in a level of espionage to kind of give like a sense of order to it. But there was a moment during the Blitz on Christmas Eve where the Germans actually ended up bombing really close to a population center, but just missing the churches where they're having midnight mass.
Okay.
And so, without getting into spoilers, we get into what if they had a radio man on the ground who was trying to call in what would be the points of like mass destruction to call on for a psychological win over the British. But of course, we have Captain Willard there, who's has Britain's most chiseled chin and is going to stop things before they go wrong.
Chiseled chin.
Yeah, it's really interesting seeing the ways that he's been drawn by 3 artists now, and because the way that Quentin drew him for that is, it's very. He looks like he could be in the running for Captain Britain, whereas in the main line he looks much more like the investigator in Ticket to a Soldier Spy.
Yeah, I'm seeing that a lot with the characters, like in the Demon Tale book. The Paul Pelletier version of Demon compared to the Demon that's been in the more recent Silverline books.
Yeah,
the ones that like the team up books and stuff like that. So quite a bit. One of the things that kind of stands out for me is going back with the Pelletier books is you see Demon and you see whites on his eyes and red, red irises.
Yeah.
But when you look at a lot of the stuff with the newer stuff, and his eyes are all red. There's not really any white. So definitely a lot of different ones. And then you look at the cover that was done, and that's completely different, to the book. I don't have the color version, but this completely different demon. So definitely quite like you said, depending on the artist that's doing it, you get either a really filled out or maybe a skinnier kind of wimpier, just or maybe you're more average guy. It all just varies depending on what that person's view is of the character. So
Absolutely.
And thinking about like Wolf Hunter, sorry, thinking of Wolf Hunter, the last thing you want a guy as a spy like person is to be this big hulking guy that stands out, right?
Right.
You want him to blend.
It's always that interesting thing where the way that Tom Clancy wrote Jack Reacher, that he never interacted with a CIA operative once in his life. He's like 6'5", 280 pounds, and he describes his hands as being like twice the size of a beer can. If you want to be a guy who, like, when someone points out, like, yes, that's the man that killed the other dude.
What I want to know is, who. Speaking about that, who approved the casting of Tom Cruise for that?
Yeah,
that's not the character.
The Reacher TV show on Amazon is much more like accurate to the books, and they also did some stuff now where they changed his backstory, so he wasn't intelligence officer, he was military security, which is still intelligence, but it makes sense for him being massive as opposed to, if you're a CIA handler, you're going to look like a gray man. Yeah,
looking like the biggest small silverbacks. Good gravy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. On my end of media intake, like David mentioned, I got on Marvel Unlimited. Unfortunately, the owner of our last local friendly comic book shop passed away, so his stores closed down and auctioned off. So now I have to resort to either getting trades when they come into the Barnes & Noble, or if I want to read something, go online. So thankfully, other things like TKO you can do are mostly just order online anyway, TKO and Vault. So, but Marvel stuff I got on.
Oh, that's a bummer. I don't know if you guys saw earlier this week, a couple days ago. I don't know where, but apparently some comic shop in the country burnt down.
Oh, no. Yeah.
A couple of days ago, a place called Monarch Comics. And the owner posted on Facebook and showed the outside. It was like a little mini mall caught fire, and you got a call like at 3:00 in the morning. By the time he drove down there, the fire department was there, and the store went up. And if you've got a bookstore, come on, comic shop. I mean, that's it. And the fire got in there. It's totally gone. So
yeah. Oh, speaking of irrecoverable damage to comics. I don't know if anyone is familiar with the story, but did you guys? I have a really weird connection to a terrible loss like this. Thankfully, and hopefully that's where no one was hurt there. But this one, very similar. Where do you guys ever hear about years ago when the Dark Horse comic vault got flooded?
No,
not really.
Apparently, the company I used to work for, when they were doing some work on the systems, triggered the fire alarms.
Oh. Ouch.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I hope they had insurance. I mean, that was my thought when I was looking at the results of this burnt comic shop, and I hope they were insured up. Wow, this.
Yeah.
Yeah, but even insured or not, like, man, like I know my local comic shop. My guy has just a bunch of like graded comics and like some really old stuff, like all displayed in the shop. And it's not a ginormous shop, you know what I mean? So like it's all, prized possessions and whatnot. It's not like he's very proud of it. If that joint went up, holy monkeys, I would probably go there and cry with him.
Right. Yeah.
Uh,
That was
Actually-
pretty sad moment for us with Tony passing. So it's kind of, it felt morbid, but also it was like you go to the auction for everything in the comic shop and also like pay respects to Tony.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
Tim, silent partner.
Well, I can tell you firsthand, relating to fire in a comic shop. When I was a teenager, I worked at a comic shop that went up, and yeah, that there's definitely that smell doesn't go away,
Mhm.
and even if you try and salvage some of the stuff that was there, that smoke smell all is absorbed, even if the fire didn't touch it or the water didn't touch it. That smoke smell is just all without,
Yeah, it will
all within
always
everything.
permeate your nose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's a reality check. I mean, it's the lesson that all of us eventually learn one way or another. I mean, whether it's, I mean, as far as losing a person, I think that's a tragedy. That's
Yeah.
heartbreaking to lose somebody. All right. I mean, really, okay. It's nothing. I don't think anything more precious than human life, but everything else that we enjoy, that makes our lives brighter and happier, are valuable things and
Yeah.
memory things. But in the end, there's stuff as well, and none of them are going to last forever. Maybe 100 years or whatever, but ultimately, it doesn't last. It's stuff that's the old George Carlin, comedy routine, right? We're so caught up and fascinated with stuff, and
Right.
not to put a damper on things, but it's like a perspective. I had a really good friend who lived in Kentucky, and his day job was actually that. He was the morning DJ at a local radio station, and was a writer, a book collector, a comic book collector, you name it, right? And he died suddenly, I think at the age of 60, had a massive heart attack. And he and his wife didn't have any children. And he left her with a house, literally full of first edition books, comics by the thousands, a garage full of comic long boxes, collectible, figures, toys, video games, you name it. All right. And she didn't have a clue, never mind what to do with it, but what the value of it was, And so, when we found out, some of us who were his friends, long distance friends, did our best, as much as we could online and by phone to help her find reputable dealers and people who could take care of that collection and give her a fair market value for it. All right. But, the subsequent years after that, and this was maybe 6-7 years ago now, but I've started giving a lot more thought when I come into my office every day to work and look at all the stuff that I'm surrounded with, that I've collected over the years. And I'm starting to parcel it out. I'm starting to go to shops and seeing what I can get for it and whatever, because again, it's like, I know my time will come, and last thing in the world I want is to leave my wife, with that issue, with having to deal with that kind of stuff. So it's like, maybe I can find good homes for some of these collectible toys right now, and maybe find other comic, collectors in the area, via the comic shops and whatever. And like I said, slowly divest myself of some of this stuff. Okay. Keep my personal treasures that I look at and whatever, but just don't hang on to it for dear life, because life goes by way too fast.
Yeah. Speaking of real life stuff, something I'm qualified to talk about again. since I have just recently moved back into the world of financial advising, so I no longer need to give certain disclaimers when talking about stuff. But something that the ancient Romans did, I know there's like a movement to bring it back that I think needs to be done, is the idea of talking about death with your family over dinner and kind of doing your end of life planning, kind of at any point in life. It's never bad to have sort of plans in motion, and even better if you can get some legal stuff for this.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah, if you can, and so something that I'm doing and I recommend people doing is finding some ways to put together, get your stuff involved in a will or a trust, so that your belongings go to a trust and then get handed out from there, as opposed to letting your next of kin have to deal with all that. So,
Smart.
So I recommend that people look into that kind of at any point. Is just go to your bank or credit union, ask to speak to the financial advisor, and look and putting together a trust.
Yeah.
I am going through that right now. I'm on the tail end of it. It's been a 2-year journey.
Yeah.
My mom passed away in 2022, and she had a handwritten will, and there was the original was lost, so we had a mail order copy and all this stuff, and it's just been all of this stuff with the lawyer and just fighting to get rights for executorship and everything. It's just a huge thing. So I definitely echo that. Trust is the way to go.
This is what I tell my kids. I started off with nothing. I still got some of it left, and you're gonna get stuck with it.
Amazing.
Yeah, but you don't think the stuff where even your bank accounts. If you got bank accounts that your spouse doesn't have access to,
Right?
It's a whole thing.
A bank account your spouse doesn't have access. I don't even know what those words mean together.
I do.
Yeah.
My wife and I are separate. She has her bank accounts and I have my bank accounts, and we come together and split the the rent, and everything comes out of both. And it's just a different way of thinking. It's you don't have the thing where you feel like every time you work and you have to turn your check over. You at least have some stuff where you automatically have all the bills come out, and then you have a little bit extra, that stuff that you have that you can spend on what you want, and you don't asking for permission to buy something like that. See what I'm saying? It's like, what is this?
I don't even know what that means. I think you're talking some mythical stuff.
But we always make sure all the bills get paid first and all that stuff. So
you're funny, Dave.
This is a great segue into our topic. Is family dynamics and tension. And some things that happen with families is finances, the way that things get handled, the way that it's spent, and every family does it differently. As we've demonstrated here today.
I mean, if that doesn't fall into family dynamics, I do not know what does. All right. And the truth of the matter is, I think, the whole idea of a solid family is honest and upfront communications and working out personalities and what you're good at and what your partner's good at and whatever. I mean, I have friends. I have friends who basically do all the financing. Okay. Mm-hmm. They're numbers people. They love to sit down and take care of the bills and plan this out and, finances and this and that. I hate numbers. I suck at numbers. All right. If I was in charge of the family budget, we'd have been in the poorhouse decades ago. Whereas luckily the woman I married, my partner, is just the opposite of that. She's organized. She knows what to do with it. She can make a dollar stretch like it drives me up a tree. All right. And so right up the front, I said, okay, whatever we earn that comes into this house, it's yours. All right. And she gives me the workplace. All right.
So,
this is family dynamics. This is the topic we're talking about. And sad to say, there are people who don't do this, who butt heads all the time about it. All right, not taking a step back and recognizing what each other's strengths are, respecting those, and use them for the benefit of the family.
Yeah. And that moment of butting heads, that conflict is what you can use as fodder for compelling storytelling. But yeah, that's kind of the thing that you notice with a lot of comic characters is you look at what well-adjusted people would do, and then you make them do the opposite of that. So kind of the opposite of what you had going on would be Tony Stark and Pepper Potts when they got together. Pepper's looking at his finance like, we need to do this, this, and this. And Tony's like, I need to buy new armor. I just need to.
There you go. Right.
New artwork.
That was the principle. Wasn't that the principle for Sandman? His whole thing was like he was trying to get money for his daughter, right? I mean, that wasn't just that was in the comics as well.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. Totally. Oh, yeah.
So different family dynamic, in that, you know, he knows he's doing something wrong, but he's doing the only thing he can think of to take care of his family, to take care of his child.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, so you can have those moments where you have two characters on the same side butting heads, and if you think about like, how do I interact in my daily relationships? Do I you know, rely on my partner to handle my finances, and I'm good with that, or where do we meet on that? And then if I were to be a butt about this, how would I act? And that's how you write Iron Man. Or if you have like opposing dynamics where someone's family ties are solid, but the way they interact with society is in some way misaligned. And that is usually you can create a compelling villain and a really good sympathetic villain, and that they understand what they're doing for their family, and the connection there is solid. It makes sense. And like, you'd want them to succeed in that, but they're doing it in a way that harms other people.
Right.
I ended up dealing with the whole family thing, you know, years ago when I put together my proposal for the Green Hornet series from Now Comics. And the idea, when it came time to put that proposal together, you had one or two ways to go with it. You could have basically just created a brand new, iteration of the Green Hornet for the time that I was writing it, late, 1980s, early 1990s, and just go with that, just the way they'd done with the TV series with Van Williams and Bruce Lee. They just came in and said, okay, this is the Green Hornet for the 1960s. But the thing is, as I was researching the character himself, I went back to the days of his, origin at WXYZ in Detroit on radio as a radio series. From that, I saw it develop and get brought to films with the two serials Universal put out, the Green Hornet in 1940 and the Green Hornet Strikes Again in 1941. Jump, 20 some odd years, and now you have the 60s Green Hornet TV show, and here we are 20 years later, and Steve Irwin was the artist who got me, caught up in wanting to do this. And Steve and I got to talking, and finally one day I just told him, I said, it seems like you have so much potential with the history of this character throughout the decades, all right, from the 40s from the radio to today, then why don't we just mine that? And that's when, we worked out this concept of making it a family and not different Green Hornets per se, i.e. the sire of the whole legacy thing was the radio Green Hornet, who eventually, we see in the Universal serials. But then we have the next generation that shows up in the 60s, and then we lay the groundwork for what was then our modern Green Hornet. And so the whole concept of that was to make that work according to the timeline and the ages of the character. Now, at the time when I wanted to do this and put it together, I'm sitting at a kitchen table with notebooks and calendars and dates and, calculators. And realization comes along the fact that 20 years, the typical concept of a generation of a person from birth to being 20 years old in adulthood never lined up properly with someone having a crime fighting career for 20, 30 years, getting married, right? And then at 40 or whatever, having children. And by the time, they're at that age to do that, you're into your late 60s or 70s. So I'm pulling out at that time what hair I had because the timeline never worked. It just couldn't work. Guys, it drove me crazy, all right? I mean, for weeks on end, I would sit at that table with the calculator, with the timetable, and try everything I could, and it just wouldn't work. Okay. Take it, Brett, leave it alone for a couple days. Just let the old subconscious start thinking about it. Well, in the course of researching the character, one of the things that I learned, all right, right up front, way back when, was the fact that the Green Hornet was an actual descendant of the Lone Ranger. Mm. The Lone Ranger was his great uncle. And then one day, that's what it was. All of a sudden, one day I'm sitting there thinking, all right, I can't make this work, father to son. But what about uncle to nephew? Okay, so now here's a solution to the timeline problem with the generations. If you've got a Britt Reed operating in the 1940s as the Green Hornet, but he hasn't married yet, all right, what's to say he doesn't have a brother who's an archaeologist, and his brother gets married, and while he's fighting crime, his brother has a son, Britt's nephew, who invariably finds out his uncle is the Green Hornet, and he wants to follow in his footsteps. And so suddenly we were going uncle to nephew instead of father to son, and the whole family tree just falls right into place. Right? Yeah. At the same time, it also, if you're a writer, gives you all these great supporting characters, because now you have to flesh them out. What was the brother like? What's the nephew like? And as you work your way through the generations, I remember when I started writing that opening storyline, we started way back when with the last case of the original Green Hornet and brought it all the way up to 1989, right? So 3 generations. And all these characters so enriched. It was the family. The family was what was driving the whole narrative. All right. I mean, even to the point where I had the TV Brit's cousin is the lawyer who takes the place of the character from the TV show. In our world, it's not Scanlon, the male guy. In the modern Green Hornet, it was the new Green Hornet, Paul Reed's cousin, who's the district attorney, and in on The Secret. Again, keeping the family dynamics going and working our way through that. Even to the point where, when we get to the point where we're going to introduce the modern Green Hornet, right? They're 2 brothers. Again, it's the uncle. It's their uncle who was the TV Hornet, all right? So you got 2 brothers. One wants to be the Green Hornet. That was, I'm trying to remember what his name was. If I get it straight, what was it, Mike or Dan or something. But the point is, our Green Hornet, I needed something else for our Green Hornet. Again, it just stretches. The more characters you have, the more characters you develop in a family dynamic, the more fodder for storytelling, for subplots, all right? So the point where I made the character that would ultimately become our center character a concert pianist. I said to myself, I'm going to take this guy out of this whole hero thing completely and make him the last thing in the world you would think of as a masked avenger, right? To the point where what happens is his brother becomes the new Green Hornet, and on his first mission is literally killed by the bad guys. And Paul, who's in Paris giving a concert, gets this message from the family saying that his brother's been killed and he has to come home. He comes home, and basically the rest of the family, the grandfather, his uncle, his own father, are all looking at him like, well, your brother's dead. It's your turn. And he's like, nope, I'm not doing this. It's not. Again, it's dynamics. It's conflict. It's whatever. It took me we're talking, 22, 24-page scripts. It took us 7 issues to go from that opening storyline all the way to our brand new Green Hornet and Kato. And trust me, there were moments in that period, that year, where the publisher was like, come on, 40, when the hell are we going to get our characters? All right, this has gone on for 3 issues. This has gone on for 4 issues, right? And I was like, man, you got to tell the story. You have to tell the story of the family. And thank you, Lord, it worked. It actually worked. And we brought on a slew of fans who absolutely loved that. And again, it's the thing that started my career as a comic book writer, and it's still the thing that, people come up to me and talk to me all these years later about reading those comics and how much they enjoyed them. But I always get that comment about the fact that up until what we did, this making the family center was something new, and people appreciated it so much.
Nice. Yeah, that's kind of reminds me of what I'm currently reading right now, which is a Venom War, and it kind of plays on some similar themes, which is the idea of what if your inheritance isn't necessarily an item, but it's a responsibility. And they do something a little different with it, where I like how you approached it, kind of like what happened one of the first times that Batman died, where now it falls to Dick Grayson to become Batman, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the idea of giving off to adopted son. But I think it's interesting in Venom War. I'm still not entirely sure how sold I'm on it, because it's a newer Marvel storyline, but there's some things I think aren't as cleanly done in editorials I think they could have been. But the idea of Eddie Brock and Dylan Brock butting heads over who has control of the Venom symbiote, it's kind of the idea of a cursed inheritance of whoever has it, it's going to cause them misfortune, so they want to keep it from the other person, not realizing that they're going to be just as bad with it. When the only comic I wrote that dealt with family dynamics like that, because both Soul Ascendant and Wolf Hunter, I tried to make characters that were more or less their family was their responsibility, right? I guess I think Willard describes himself as being married to Britain. He's just very impeccably English. But in the one I wrote that has deal found dynamics is Dracula. And the way that since we're staying so close to the book, we actually deal with a lot more with the parallel of the two couples that you didn't really necessarily get in the Universal movies. That is Arthur and Lucy versus Harker and Mina, both dealing with the same sort of interaction or like corruption from Count Dracula, in that Dracula turns both Lucy and Mina, but the way that they're able to resolve things, the way they're able to handle things, and using that as a way to explore commitment in your relationship, as well as like the resolve of everyone. I'm guessing I'm going to spoil a 200-year-old book, so spoilers if you have not yet read Bram Stoker's Dracula. But Lucy is one of the first characters to die.
Oh my gosh, you ruined it for me!
Right? Because of how quickly she kind of gets discarded by Arthur and the way that they handle things, and that they think that she's dead in her bed. They don't necessarily give her the time. And then and Arthur also doesn't have the same experience as Harker does or that Van Helsing does. So she gets buried, put in a crypt, and waking up in a crypt, she fully commits to becoming the monster that Dracula turned her into. And so it comes down to the group to do that wonderful scene that we're going to get in issue 2 with her being beheaded and stuffed in a casket with her mouth full of garlic.
Oh.
I'm really looking forward to seeing what Rob does with that. But when Mina gets turned, Harker, who is so committed to her that he literally survived free scaling the side of a castle in freezing Romania and woods, kind of to the point where he did inhuman tests to get back to her. While he has his own trauma, his own shock to happen, so he's so committed to his partner that he immediately starts seeking the experts, talking to Van Helsing, making sure that he's keeping her in care, but also relying on her because he knows that she's smarter than him. So he knows that she's putting together puzzles when he can't see them. And it comes to a way of using that, exploring trust and commitment to each other. And in the end of the book, what we'll end up getting to issue 4 is you get kind of a fun, almost couple style buddy cop dynamic where while the rest of the group goes to deal with they all go to Romania and they have to split up at a point, and you get this fun buddy cop dynamic where Harker, it's all right, I trust you. You know more about putting this together and ending the curse than I do. So you're going with Dr. Van Helsing. I'm taking the boys, and we're chasing this Barovian man on a steamboat. And so the ability of trusting his fiance, who he knows is actively turning into a vampire, to go off with a crazy European man into the mountains and face the literal demons of Castle Dracul, versus Arthur, who redeems himself as a character, but is very quickly kind of well, Lucy's dead, put her in a box. So I think that's another fun way of using two families to explore one dynamic, and in opposing contrasts. The show Modern Family, I think, does a really funny take on things like this.
Oh,
yeah.
I mean, at its core, family is almost undefinable to a degree. I mean, I don't know about you guys. I mean, I had 2 brothers and a baby sister. Now the brother, I was the oldest. The brother, a year and a half younger than I. My memories of us growing up initially was we fought like cat and dogs, and we were forever fighting each other. I mean, literally, we punched the shit out of each other and everything else. Drove my parents crazy, right? Thought we were going to kill each other. The kicker is though, if we were in school and somebody was picking on my brother, then they were dealing with both of us.
Yeah,
and vice versa. Okay, as much as an hour earlier, I'd been beating on him. Nobody else does that. He's my brother, okay? And then, the person who had my back all the time was my brother. And we look back on it now, we laugh our asses off, all right? Because in the end, it's what family is, all right? If you're that blessed and lucky enough, all right, to grow up in a family and have, siblings, then you're one footstep ahead of I had friends, growing up in school who were single, children. And I wouldn't have wanted that for nothing in the world, ever. All right. I mean, some of my fondest memories, we're talking about holidays. We just went through Thanksgiving. All right. Christmas is coming up and whatever. All right. And I can't imagine and remember those without thinking of my brothers and my sister and experiencing life with them together.
Really. Well, Ron and I have kind of talked at length here. David, Jose, do you guys have any thoughts you want to throw in here?
Well, it makes sense. You guys would talk at length. You guys are writers. You guys steal forth from the brain.
Yeah, we do.
But in regards to family, I wasn't very close to my dad growing up, but I was very close to my mom. My mom was the one that took care of me, took care of my brother, and like Ron said, me and my brother used to fight all the time. We used to have knife fights in the house. We would launch knives at each other. And there are when we were little, the house we lived in, the kitchen cupboard had so many tick 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 dinks where the knife stuck in, the door open to block it. Like we could have killed each other. At one point, I held a chair over my brother's throat because I was going to choke him out till he died. And then my mom came in the garage door and beat the holy monkeys out of me. But like you said, when something went down, like with me, my brother's 5 years younger than me. There was nothing that would like my brother would move time itself to get to wherever I was to make sure that he could help me or we could help each other or you know what I mean. So and then I could like you said I couldn't imagine not having my brother there. Like I talked to my brother just recently a couple days ago. You know what I mean? We are ridiculous when we talk to each other. But like to me, like when I write or not, well, when I created my comic, my Gothic Western, I did. The guy doesn't have a family, but the person that he's with, I wrote her like she was a sister to him to take care of, right? Even though she's being self-destructing and like going down a path to to destroy herself, he was like he had like a big brother. I gotta step in. I gotta keep her safe. I gotta take care of her, regardless of the shenanigans she's getting into. And I think that's important. Like you mentioned Fantastic Four, I think it's the idea of like a family superhero team. Even Marvel markets it as the first family. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just the idea of doing that, and people, a lot of, other companies have used that like that same like formula. You know what I mean? Tweaked here and there, but same formula. Star Wars did it with Luke Skywalker and Princess Leia. And yeah, and another spoiler, and brother and sister people, if you haven't seen it, movie came out like what 70 something, 74. Like, come on. But yeah, that's a pretty universal dynamic and like formula to use in stories that just like would help. It grounds a character. Like if you have a character that has a family to either take care of or that gets involved in the things that you're doing. Even if it seems annoying, like oh my, like what are you doing? You can't do that. You're like oh leave me alone, blah blah. But it's that family dynamic that grounds a character, that grounds a hero. Like that is what readers are going to read and say, oh, I can relate to that. Like my brother and I used to fight all the time, but man, like when I'm needing some help and whatnot, bam, there you are. You know what I mean? No one gets to like beat your brother up, but you. And just
Amen. Yep.
it's a dynamic that works. People relate to it. It just it will never get old. Honestly, it's a formula that will never grow old.
Well, with me, it's like I had a brother and I have a sister. My sister's a couple of years older than me. My brother was 9 years older. So growing up, it's like he's a teenager and I was a young kid, and a lot of things didn't cross over until we actually got older. My brother and my sister used to fight all the time, always fighting, whatever. So I get that I definitely get that dynamic. And I know that once we got older, my brother and I were very much along, and we actually kind of rebonded. We moved down to Texas. We lived in an apartment together and all this stuff. And, we really got to know each other. A lot of similar interests and things like that. Unfortunately, about pretty much a year after my mom died, my brother passed away during, the COVID times. So, that that dynamic with the sounding board and all that, I knew that I could always, throw things on him and him being a sounding board. And, when we were trying to get my mom before she passed away and all the dementia that she was going through, to try and get her to sign whatever paperwork and all that stuff, which she didn't want to. So there is that. I've seen, I've seen the fighting thing. I actually never ever fought with my brother. We always got along. And, kind of a weird story is when I was a little baby, we were in a major car accident, and one of those, think of, National Lampoon Vacation, the big station wagon in the back, and back then in those days the kids played in the back, right? So what ended up happening is the car accident, we ended up losing control and hitting the center barrier and spinning, and when it hit the other side of the freeway and then back. And what ended up happening is my brother was holding on to me, and he was doing it as long as he could. He eventually lost control, but he managed to do it, and he pretty much saved my life because when all was said and done, the whole back section had come out of the car, the flooring and everything. And because he was able to hold on to me so much, but I landed in the spare tire rather than getting sucked out.
Wow.
And my sister, unfortunately, she was sucked out with the floor, but she had some injuries, but she turned out okay and all that stuff. So I do have that bond with my brother, on that thing, and I always remember that he did save my life. So I think there's some good dynamics and things that for the fighting thing, but then there's also some good family things that I've seen with that stuff. There's another perspective that I wanted to bring up. It's kind of different from the perspective I had, and it's from a comic. Actually, it's more of a cartoon that was a manga. I don't know if you guys ever heard of it. It's called Tekkaman. It was Japanese anime that was on. Ron probably remembers this. The UPN network.
Okay.
Yeah. So before it was the CW and all that stuff with all the Arrowverse and all that, it was UPN, and it was one of the shows that was on there. And they had a kind of an interesting take with the family dynamics. And what it was a family of explorers that were captured by an alien, a very malevolent alien race. And what they did was essentially, I think the parents got killed right away, and there was 4 siblings. There was an older brother, there was a younger sister, and then there was a pair of twins. And what ended up happening is part of this thing that these aliens did with the people that they captured is they basically put them in these pods, and it basically changed them, and over time that would basically turn them into evil minions. And they had a power that this Tekkaman suit, it's like a suit of armor that that came over their bodies and all this stuff, but they basically eventually would become evil. So what ended up happening with this family thing was the parents had died, and the older brother managed to get one of the 2 twins out of the chamber. And you didn't know what really happened with the other twin, in the very beginning. And what ended up happening is the older brother, I think, died as part of that, getting him out. So he was kind of the protagonist, and he could turn into this. He had like a crystal, and he could use it, and he could armor up and fight things. But he had like a 30-minute timer, and when the 30 minutes, if he stayed too long, then he would turn evil. And 1 or 2 times he did that, and they were able to bring him back. But what ended up happening is you find that the main antagonist is actually his brother, his twin brother, is pure evil, who has the same powers that he does. So you have that butting heads. You know, the older brother's dead, the parents are dead, and then at one point, as the series went on, I think it was like 50 episodes or something like that, maybe 30 episode 35 around that range, is the sister gets kicked out of her pod. She's rejected. So she shows up, but she's basically dying. The whole process is killing her. So her thing is trying to get the two brothers to cooperate with each other before she dies, and she does. She does die, and you know it kind of goes in that way. But there were some really cool dynamics because you can't really think of, you know, if you really think about siblings that are of the same mind, twins are the ones that your mind goes to. Hey, you know, these are the two that are most likely going to be on. You know, you have some things about, you know, identity where, you know, maybe one wants to have long hair and the other short hair. So, you know, I'm my own person type thing. But a lot of the mindset and everything is that way. But for them to go and take the story and put these two as the equivalent adversaries for each other, I think was done very, very well.
Okay, I get the drama of that right off the bat. Really? Wow. All right.
So some cool stuff. Sorry, a little bloated on the explanation, but I wanted to give you some of the context. Of how it would. I actually have some of the things on DVDs around the house, the Japanese ones, and then I think I have like one of the volumes of the English one. But yeah, it was an interesting show. So.
Nice. All right, cool. Well, we're about at an hour 22 now, so we're getting ready to wrap up tonight's show.
Go ahead.
Oh, so I haven't. Let me grab my calendar so I can see what we're going to talk about next week. Next week is. So next week is just a general, calling it a fireside chat. So I might do a screen share of like one of those fireplace videos on repeat. But it'll be a point for us all to kind of chat about our journey in comics so far, just in general, and our reflection of lessons learned over our careers of varying lengths. And the different levels we've all been involved at, as well as the things we're looking forward to in the future. We've gathered some frequently asked questions that we either have or have not answered during the time we've been live. So we'll also be taking a shot at all of those. So if you are watching live now or are one of our listeners who listen in the week following each release, feel free to stop on by our YouTube, Twitch, or Facebook stream next Tuesday, 8 p.m. Pacific time to give us your questions. Or if you have to listen to us after the fact, I have my Blue Sky listed, as well as our YouTube comments are open, so you can also leave questions in there or send them at me on Blue Sky. I'm not sure what a post on Blue Sky is yet. It's not a tweet. I think it might just be. There's nothing really that works well with Blue me a message or something.
I think you can message on it, right?
Yeah, you can message on it, but I don't know if my direct messages are open. But people can post on my post at me, and I will see it. But if you can't think of anything, we have collected a series of frequently asked questions, so hopefully someone else has been thinking the same thing.
Yeah, just pulled the thing. This is
there. You go.
This is the U.S. series.
Nice.
Techno Man.
Kind of looks like a.
This is the Japanese one. It's Tekkaman Blade, but if you look here, you can see the two brothers, the protagonist in the white here,
Yep.
and then the antagonist in the black and red. But those are the things that the outfits and stuff that they do when they power up. So and they fight. So that's what that was. Sorry.
Oh, cool. Yeah. All right. Well, we've been talking about we talked about a lot today, but squeezed in a good 45 minutes on families. There we go. Does anyone else have any closing thoughts or advice, or even like closing thoughts on the visuals of families? Since we've talked a lot about writing them, but not necessarily giving them a visual identity. For me, the example I always go to is the Summers family and how they all kind of have similar wavy hair, and as an editorial choice they did, going from Scott to Havoc to Vulcan and then Corsair is like, no, they all need to have this weird little floopy thing at the front so people know they're related.
Right. Havoc in the 90s was cooler, just saying.
Yeah.
Well, you think of some of the animated stuff. Havoc never had his hairstyle was completely different. He had the the surfer dude haircut.
Yeah, he had that poof.
Yeah.
Well, that was definitely that's what Tim's talking about. But you think of like the X-Men animated series when he shows up and he's in Australia, he's surfing and all this, and he's got he's very much a little different, and that was one of the things that I enjoyed on the cover for X-Men, Uncanny X-Men 339 when I did it was the when I colored the one with Havoc and Cyclops fighting each other upside down.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun for me to be able to do that. I mean, we had a colorist that did a lot of the layouts on marker comps and all that stuff, but computer coloring it was really a lot of fun. So
That's awesome.
Yeah. Which is kind of weird because I'm seeing a lot of things like they're releasing books like the Onslaught series and stuff like that, because that's where the Onslaught book started. So they're using that cover, reprinting that cover quite a bit, in some of the collected volumes. It's kind of
Nice. That's cool. That's always gotta like feel good and weird at the same time when you see like something you have done like that suddenly get massive amounts of reprints. Like, well, a bunch of people now have this in their hands again.
It was a good cover. It was an interesting cover. So I'm glad that they kind of picked that one to redo.
Yeah.
Right.
And I know they're also doing that with I think Siege Perilous because of how much it relates to new stuff after Krakoa. They're also doing a lot of stuff for the Siege Perilous storyline.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for your thoughts today. Thank you, chatters and listeners who have been with us tonight. We'll be back 8 p.m. Pacific time next week to reflect on our career in comics so far. And we've all been it for various lengths, and we've all learned different things and have had to go through different hoops and hurdles that each one of us has essentially worked at different levels. So we'll all be kind of sharing different stories, different things we've learned, as well as answering your questions and what we're looking forward to next year in comics. Make sure to go to fundmycomic.com. Beyond the Stars #4 is currently on the front page. So go ahead and get your pre-order in today. If you want some art, make sure to snag it up before it's gone. A lot of it already is. And be on the lookout for Wolf Hunter 2 next month.
Yay.
Good stuff.
Check out
right.
Wednesday Wham and Silver Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern those days. We'll see you next week. But until that time, make mine Silverline.
Hi, I'm Greg Horn. Make mine Silverline.